Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. I got my Mountaineer friend, right? I think you said before we jumped on, it's been about 9 months. From old good old Dub V, Ryan Huff. So I appreciate you joining us today. And like we said, shoot the shit, man. Shoot the shit. Um, but before we get rocking and rolling, tell us a wild story, man. What you got?
Yeah, wild story. So I can think back to my senior year at App State in 2021. We had just played a game at Charlotte, played in the Panther Stadium. I had a pretty good game. I played free safety, and so I'm going into the next game feeling pretty confident. I caught a pick in Charlotte. I'm lit. I'm feeling good, and so the next game was Miami. We go down to Miami, having a pretty good game against them. Coach is like, "Yo, some scouts here. You getting some buzz." So I'm like, "Okay, I'm doing pretty good." So on this one particular play, go in, get a tackle, a routine tackle, and something just didn't feel right about my shoulder, and so didn't get up. I was like, what's going on? So we go get a kind of like a X-ray in the locker room. They're like, yeah, we don't see anything, but I'm like, yo, I can't play. And so I didn't finish the rest of the game. Mind you, this is like the second quarter that I come out. So they're like, yeah, we'll just get you back in Boone, get you an MRI. So fly back, worst pain I ever had in my life. Like couldn't sleep, couldn't do anything. And so I go get the MRI, just to check things out. I leave the hospital. I'm going to Bojangles to get a biscuit. Actually, I had bought the biscuit. I get a call from my trainer. He's like, "Yo, have you ate anything yet?" I'm like, "No, what's going on?" That's a weird question. He was like, "Yeah, we looked at your MRI. Your shoulder has been out of place for 24 hours. We need to get you back to the hospital, pop it back in place, put you to sleep." So
Damn.
that probably was like the wildest thing I've ever experienced. Like just having to
Yeah.
go back, get put to sleep. And up until that point, getting put to sleep was like my biggest fear. And so I didn't have my parents up there or nothing. It was just like so quick. That's probably like the wildest thing that's happened to me.
Yeah. I love it, dude. So tell us, like as we dive in, are you coming to WVU like from App State? I guess I'm always curious about, kind of people's journeys, a little bit of backstory in terms of like how you got to where you are now, in terms of like player, or I guess it's student athlete
Yeah.
development is the appropriate title.
Mhm.
But like, yeah, like just the evolution of being a player into where you are now.
Yeah. So I grew up in Athens, Georgia, Bulldog Country, huge Bulldog
Okay, yeah.
fan.
I'm in Cumming, Georgia right now.
Oh,
So
for
not
real? Okay,
yeah,
so
not
yeah,
too
yeah,
far.
that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So grew up in Athens, Georgia, man. Played every sport known to man. Played football, basketball, did track, tried soccer, and so went to Cedar Shoals High School. Got the scholarship to play football at Appalachian State. Played there from 17 to 21.
Okay.
And had that energy in 21 that kind of ended my career. Decided to stay there, get my master's in higher education while working in academic services for student athletes. So kind of worked there for about a year, and then ended up coming here to Morgantown, getting the opportunity as a student athlete development coordinator.
Yeah, I guess as like while you're getting your master's, I guess like put us in your brain a little bit, so to speak, in terms of like paint the vision, paint the picture of like what was it like what was the ultimate like dream outcome for you? Was it always in higher education? Was it always in like student athlete development? And then with that is I'm always curious. I always ask, I'd say probably the majority of people this question of like, as you went on this journey to help athletes, guide them, mentor them, whatever you want to call it, was the story more from like a pain or from a pleasure standpoint? And like, was it because like, hey, you experienced this pain and you didn't want others to go through the same like trials and tribulations that you did? Maybe I can like help guide them down a better path. Or it's I recently talked with somebody is like theirs was from pure pleasure. It was like I had
Yeah.
so much success. It's like I wanted to help others like enjoy their experience like I did.
Yeah. So for me, I knew I always wanted to work in athletics in some capacity. Like most guys who play football, I thought I wanted to coach. And so I had finished my undergrad degree and we didn't have sport management. And so I was like, what's the
Yeah.
closest thing? Because I was thinking about going home, just coaching PE, and then coaching my high school.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
honestly was a
Yeah.
dream, right? Like go to school, play some games, start some games, and then go home, be a PE teacher. And so what ended up happening was I wasn't thinking about that. Like I wasn't prepared, if that makes sense. I was your typical student athlete, right? Just going to class, really not even going to class, to be honest with you. I had graduated. So,
Facts.
like,
Facts.
and so I'm going through that whole process and I get hurt. And so when I got hurt and I had that kind of little emergency surgery, I was out for like 3 weeks. And so that kind of
Mhm.
gave me time to think about what I really wanted to do and how to dive into that. And so I was already in higher ed. And so, you have to have an assistantship. So at the time I was working in career services, doing my GA kind of position. I was like, I wonder if we have anything like student athlete development at App State again because it's a smaller program. And so reached out to my academic advisor like, hey, would love to give back to student athletes, kind of like in the life skills sense. But
Yeah,
at the
yeah, yeah.
time, our director of student athlete development, Rob Carsall, one of my biggest mentors, he wasn't in at the time, and so I worked in academic services probably for like 6 months, and then I left and went and worked in student athlete development, and that kind of took off. Um, in terms of pain and pleasure, I think it's a little bit of both because
Yeah.
from the pleasure side, like I had a great experience at App State. Like even though I was kind of not going to class or kind of doing the bare minimum, you know how it is when you're a student athlete. Like you're doing the bare minimum, you're doing your job. Like I graduated with like a 3.2 GPA,
Right.
a bit better, but I was just skating by. But I had a great experience. Like I met a lot of people. Our AD Doug Gillen is still one of my biggest mentors.
Nice.
Jonathan
Yeah.
Peter, they kind of did a great job in molding me. And so like just that pleasure part of how they helped me out when I transitioned, I was like, yo, like I would love to be in y'all shoes and like help student athletes transition, get them jobs, kind of talk about my experiences. And so, and it also is the pain part, right? Because I did go through that injury and I didn't know what I wanted to do
Yeah.
exactly. I'm feeling like, oh, this is crazy. Here I am in my senior year, not knowing what I want to do. And like, I don't want student athletes to feel the pain that I felt through those 3 weeks because it was a lot. You know how it is. Like, I lost the sport and I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Yep.
So I think it's a little bit of both. It's a
Yeah.
mixture.
Yeah. I'm curious too, is what really makes me, or like in that time that you had like those 3 weeks of like going through the injury and everything, was that a kind of the aha moment, the moment in time of like taking a step back and like really finding yourself and who you are? Is one of the stories that makes me think about is I have a buddy that helps me out, like work with some of the teams that I work with, and he's he was, I guess, an Army Ranger, and he went to West Point, and he was like my first 2 years there. He was just like I was kind of like meandering through, like I was pissed off at the world and just kind of angry, I guess, so to speak. And he's like, I accidentally dropped a dumbbell on his hand. He's like, I had to have surgery, and so he's like, I had to spend this time in this hospital, and he's like, I really like got my shit together while I was laying in this hospital bed, and what ended up pushing him down, like going to Ranger school and all the things. So I'm curious if like that's a similar moment in time of like when you're just kind of sitting there, just like, all right, like what the hell am I actually gonna
Yeah.
do, and like start to find yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like that. I mean, because like I said, I was out for 3 weeks. So I'm literally walking around in a sling, like I'm not going to practice. So my whole routine changed just like that. Like
Right.
and so, it was a lot of emotions during that time from depression to like really trying to figure out what I want to do. Like I think that was my first time truly going through like depression. Like honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we talk about mental health for student athletes. That was my first time, like when I lost the sport, and so during that time, yeah, I mean, it was crazy. Like it was a whole bunch of emotions.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
how so, that, and it just got taken from you. And I tell people all the time, you really don't realize how much you have until it's taken from you, and then you're forced to figure out what else you need to do or who you are outside of your sport. And so, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's my whole like MO is like I always say, it's like you don't get what you want, you get who you are. And so it's
Mhm.
like really helping. I always say it's like my like true journey began of like truly understanding those things when I was like 26, 27. And I'm like, dude, if I can help you when you're like 18, 19, it's like you're literally almost a decade ahead. Like, and hands down a decade beyond like most people, especially athletes too, is like they don't think about answering so many important questions in life until like their back's against the wall, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Nah, I mean it's crazy, and that's what I try to do here, man. I'm like, I ended up in a good spot because all my student athletes were like, "Oh, you're doing so good. You're in this kind of predicament right here. You're working." I'm like, "Yeah, but I didn't figure it out until I was 23,
Right.
and you're 18 and have all these resources. I'm trying to tell you what you need to do to kind of,
Yes.
propel you forward in life." And so, I think a lot of times on the back end, we see student athletes just struggle, and I say it all the time. We're reactive, not proactive. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know what I'm saying? A lot of times
Yeah.
we tend to react rather than just being proactive and getting things done ahead of time. And so that's kind of what I preach. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and I think so many people live under the mentality of like that would never happen to me. Like I'll never feel that way. Like I'll figure it out. Like I know enough people, and yeah, like you shit hits the fan real fast.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's how it was with me again. Like I kind of was just, I think I'm thinking about that time right now. I kind of was just walking through life, like you know what I'm saying, just playing football, and I'm like, what happened to me had to happen to kind of figure out what I want to do. So I mean, that's just it's just interesting thinking on it.
Yeah. So what are you doing? I guess give us a like behind the curtain, so to speak, of like what exactly you're doing there, like at WVU now. And I guess another thing like I have to ask too is I'm assuming a little bit is like player development, student is that all like player development, student athlete development, is that all like under one umbrella? Like what's your role within that? I guess like what is it like what is your core message like to the student athletes there? I like I said, mine's like identity, right? Like I want people to understand who they are because I think as athletes, like if you can look in the mirror and know who you are, like performance will like it'll start to flow way more
Yeah,
naturally.
right.
So yeah, like, I'm just kind of curious of like what you're building out there.
Yeah, yeah. So student athlete development here is actually under the academics umbrella. So I'm actually the
Okay.
spokesman of what academics is. And so I'm a one-man shop out here. I have all the Olympic sports. And so that's career
Nice.
development. That's SAC, which is leadership. You're probably familiar with SAC,
Yeah.
you know how that was. And then community engagement and now doing a little DEI work. And again, it's all of our Olympic sports. And so I kind of have all of those areas. And we do have player development housed in football and they're their own separate unit. And so we communicate all the time though.
I was
Like
gonna
one of
say,
the,
do you guys work together on some
yeah,
things?
yeah, we definitely do. Like one of the guys was just over here. We were talking about some kind of programming and getting a networking night going. And so we still kind of communicate and bounce ideas off each other and see how we can kind of integrate all the student athletes together. Because I think that's also one thing as a football player we talked about. Like we were so siloed, and so it's the
Yeah.
same here. Like they just stay over there, and that's kind of what we're trying to eliminate. And so yeah, that's what I do here, man. Really just trying to create that career development stuff. I think that's important to me, career readiness, like having a resume, knowing you can interview, and networking. Like those are the three pieces I'm really huge on, and so that's kind of what I'm building.
Yeah, and I think too is I was literally having this conversation earlier today. Um, I was talking with somebody and it was essentially it's like, yeah, like there's so many messages actually in their LinkedIn messages of like people I need to get back to. And I was like what I'm curious of like what they're asking. And it was, hey, like I want to get into like what you're doing. And I'm like, it's like such the wrong question. And so I was like, we got back and forth of like, I was like, do you ever have to like respond back of like just teaching people like how to ask the right questions? Because I think so many people just like, hey man, I want to do what you do. It's like, can you tell me what I do? And they're like, what? No, not really. It's like, so how do you know that like you want to do what I do? And it's like, you did no research, no homework, like at all, and just assume that you want to like jump into this role. I'm sure you probably heard it even in your role, like, dude, that sounds like super fun. You just get to work with athletes all day.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the same. I get people who reach out all the time, including former teammates, and so it's important to definitely do your research, right? Like, you just don't want to hop in and reach out to someone just because it looks cool. Like, that's
Right.
definitely the wrong thing to say. And so, definitely telling all my student athletes, I'll tell anybody, like, have intention. Like, if you're gonna reach out to someone, have a list of questions. Be intentional. Like, all right, how did you get started? What made you go down this path? Because I think those are the questions that kind of spark that natural networking piece, right? Like again, you just can't ask someone like, "Oh, that looks cool." That's the wrong thing.
Yeah. 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 Or even like, I think like trying things. It's like, I think of when I had when I had my sports facility, like physical location is like, as especially college kids would come through, is I'm like, now's the time literally to just start throwing shit against the wall, right? Like, you think you want to be a nurse, go shadow somebody. Like, you think you want to be a vet, go shadow somebody. You think you want to get into student athlete development, like, let me shadow you for a day. Like, I'll go get your coffee. Like, I'll do whatever, like, I will do all your busy work for you just so that I can have the experience and see. And I don't know that, I guess they're not willing. I don't know, right? Like, of just, they just want the thing.
Yeah, I think it's that too, but then it's also like a part of like a lot of them are actually really afraid too, right? You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of them,
Interesting. Why do you say that?
I think a lot of them just are so used to communicating within their subset. So
Yeah,
football, like I was used to my guys in the locker room, right? I can talk to my other safeties, my other DBs. I can talk to them day in, day out because that's what I'm used to. I can talk to the coaches because I see them every day. I can talk to
right.
everybody in that building because I see them. But that's one thing I realized when I transitioned. Like I was scared to reach out to people because I was so used to just one set of people. If that makes sense.
Mhm.
And so I do think it's a part of that. But again, like I tell them all the time, like you have a superpower right now. You're a student athlete. Like people want to talk to you. Like that's the crazy thing about it. Like you probably can go through an interview and they'll ask you nothing but sports questions. And then you know what I'm saying? And so I think it's just a subset of being afraid, not really knowing how to reach out, not really knowing how to talk to other people or like communicating with diverse group of people. So
Yeah, and a little bit too is like I would wonder, especially on like the football side of things, where it's like, right, it's the big sport. You're the superhero. You get all the attention, right? Like everybody wants to watch you. I mean, you're on ESPN. Wrestling's not on ESPN, right? Like you
yeah.
you don't you don't have that notoriety, so to speak. And I wonder if that becomes like the crutch, right? Because they don't want to be seen as weak. They don't want to be seen as dumb or, unintelligent of like asking the wrong questions or appear stupid, right? Like just asking basic questions. And so I wonder if having so much praise, in the short run has actually become the crutch of like I heard this the other day is losers stay losers because they're never willing to lose, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like you'll stay a loser if you never shoot the shot. Basically, at some point you got to shoot the shot. And so I'm like, are those a lot of conversations you have? Is especially with the football guys, is like as you mingle in that world, I'm sure a little bit too. It's just like,
Mhm.
dude, go ask the question, go shoot the shot. Like you never know, what doors you can open up. Just shit, trying.
Yeah, yeah, nah, for real. I mean, and again, it's a lot of storytelling too, like because they want to hear your story, definitely all the time of what I've been through. One of the stories I always tell them is like, I'm simply here because one morning I woke up and I had my sling on and I emailed our AD and was like, hey, I would love to stay here. I think I can help the student athletes. Mind you, I had never had a conversation with our AD.
Right.
I was so intimidated, but like I just did it. He reached back out, was like, yo, come in tomorrow. Like I have something for you. I have a graduate assistant position here. Like, if you want to take it, we have this scholarship. And so it literally started just like that. And so again, like coming into a space where you're vulnerable is like key. Also tell the story too of like, I remember when I was like, before I got into athletics, well, I was working in the summertime at Hibbett Sports. So I go through like that kind of 6 month phase where I was working in academic services. And then after that, it kind of was like that dead period where, nobody's on campus. So I kind of had to figure things out. Wasn't getting
Mm-hmm.
funding for my graduate assistant spot. And I promise you, I'm selling shoes. Like I'm selling shoes in a town that I was just like this guy. Like I was the star. Like, you know what I'm saying? I had started for 2 years and people are like, yo, what's going on? Like, are you okay? And so I think just being vulnerable in that space, and I think that's really when I learned, like, you don't have to have it all figured out, like,
Yep.
because people want help. Like, that's what people are there to do. And like, I can't tell you how many times, like, granted, I had it figured out. I knew I was gonna go work in athletics again in August, but people really want to help. Like, hey, man, like, I know this guy. Like, would you want me to reach out to him? And so, yeah, just being vulnerable.
Yeah, it's interesting too of like especially it seems like um in the world of like football too is how like there's this rise and this humble is do you remember I literally just dropped the record. Do you remember BJ Daniels played quarterback
Yeah,
at Southport? Okay, so I just released that episode and it was like he told like this short excerpt of like after he was done playing professional football he was coaching in his high school. So he's like, let me put it to you this way. He's like, I met Obama and then I was in the basement of washing high school uniforms. Most people think of it as the other way around. And so I think of like helping them understand of like, you are going to have this humbling moment. It doesn't like you never know exactly when it's going to come. You think you do, but embrace it and like, hey, you're relatable. We all have those moments. You're not a special snowflake, so to speak. You're not the only one that has to go through this to like figure things out.
yeah. I mean, it is crazy, and that's the thing about football. Like the rise and fall is so quick as
Yeah.
well because it's a physical sport. Like anything can happen. I didn't plan on going out my senior year and getting hurt. but it happened. And I remember going back home and people like, oh, are you gonna play again? Or I didn't even try for NFL. I was like, you know what, I'm done. I
Yep.
don't play football anymore. Like I've had this time to think about who I want to be and what I want to do. But you would be surprised at like how many people I don't talk to after I
Yeah.
stopped playing football. Like it's crazy. Like the amount of likes I don't get on my Instagram because I'm not posting a football picture is like crazy. And so the rise and fall is like definitely really quick. And that's the thing. You see it from people around you, not even yourself. I think
Yes.
that's sometimes what hurts the most when it's not yourself, but you're seeing other people who are like, all right, you're not a football player. Like, all right, cool. It's whatever. Like your life is done. Basically, that's what it seems like.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. But yeah,
I wonder too, like, do you have to help like manage those situations too? Because I literally recently just had a conversation with somebody of at a major university, and they are freshmen, they're getting a lot of like notoriety. And so we were sitting at lunch, and basically I was like, people are coming out of the woodworks, aren't you? And they were like, oh my, like, how did you know? And I was like, bro, just like it's easy. I was like, just don't forget, it's like when you were nothing, right? Like when you were coming in and like you had nothing, like remember those, because the moment this is gone, 90%, 99% of those are gonna like drop off just like you said too.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, now what's interesting is I'm seeing it from a lot of my former teammates or guys I played against. And so like because I declared my career over early, and so a lot of
Yeah,
those guys still had a couple years, play around, see if the NFL was going to work. And so now they're
right.
thinking about me like, oh, like number one, what do I do? But number two, like, dog, it's not the same. No one's talking to me. I feel like nobody cares, and so I've seen it from the side of like, yeah, you're seeing guys transition out, but yeah, I've definitely seen the freshmen. It's like, oh, you making plays now, so what's going on? You getting more girls, you get more likes, and so definitely trying to keep them humble and keep them grounded and understand like the rise and fall. But again, you can only say so much, tell them so much before they actually have the experience.
Experience it. Yeah, yeah, that's a crazy, crazy, crazy world. Well, and it's affected I think everything in the sense of like your career. I say okay, that's affected. Social media. Let me be very clear of like how much it can help you and how much it can hurt you, literally, because I think that people just assume that like I mean that people don't look, and I'm like, dude, like if anybody texts you, hey, do you know such and such, the first thing you do is like hit a search on Instagram. It's literally the first thing, like especially if you're a college age, or Facebook or link, like whatever it is, right? And so it's like I'm just mind blown of like why some people don't aren't more intelligent, I guess, to put it, of like what they put out to the world.
Yeah, I mean, again, you would be surprised. I mean, a lot of people don't understand when we talk about brand development. You've probably done a lot of these things.
Yeah.
Like brand development. What do you mean? Like, how can I brand my social media? Like, what you put on social media is you. Like, you think
Yes.
people would know that, but essentially, like, what you're branding on social media is yourself. And so, it is crazy a lot of times how some people don't get that. And so,
And
yeah,
it's literally perception too, because like even what you put out there is probably only like a piece of what's even true, right? And so it's, you know, you can literally post something, your latest picture can be a picture of you drinking, and it literally might be the first time you ever had a drink in your life,
mhm,
right? But the moment somebody sees that, they label you as like, oh, like they're a partier, right?
yeah,
And so it's like, even if it's the first sip of alcohol you've ever had, it's like now you quickly get labeled as its X or
yeah,
whatever it may be.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't think people realize of like what one photo, what that can like, how that can just be a label to you.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really understand the significance of that in their perception until like I got done playing, and I still have my football pictures up there, but again, that was with my identity. Like I didn't post too much outside of the game of football, and so like
Right.
even if you look at my Instagram, still like I still have all my App State pictures up there, with not too much of me doing things outside of the game. And like I
Yeah.
promise you, if I go back home, the narrative is like, oh, do you play at WVU now? Like, are you still playing football? And I'm 2 years removed from the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just interesting how like that perception really is there. It's crazy.
Yeah. I'll I'll confess, I don't know that I've ever told anybody this, is the moment I graduated from WVU is I deleted all those social media accounts and started new ones. Like the moment I was like, yeah, I don't think anybody needs to see what happened in Morgantown.
I feel you. I feel you on that. Luckily, boom, a little smaller town, so we ain't really have to worry too much about that. But I feel you.
Even when I was in school there, it's like I'd wake up to a text from my own mother of like, seriously, I don't think this needs to be out there. I was like, yeah, you're probably right. You're probably
Yeah,
right. I should probably
yeah.
be a little more intelligent with this. So all that to say is like I was a dumbass too, like back in the day. So it's like I can say it's like I was not perfect. And I don't think at that time too, God, there was no like when I was in school, there was no Instagram. I don't even think there
Mhm.
was Snapchat. I think it was literally strictly just Facebook, really, like at that time. And now apparently if you're on Facebook, you're old. So like whatever. I mean,
I still love Facebook though. That's how you stay. Hey, that's how you stay connected with everybody. The aunties, the
literally,
uncles. You got to have Facebook still.
I
So,
don't get how I'm like when people, especially like the college kids, are like, bro, you're on Facebook, you must be old. I'm like, you do realize like 4 billion people, like it is the largest platform. So it's like, I don't know that all the old people are on there.
I mean, you have a great range of people on there. Like the age
Yeah.
is so crazy, right? Like you got grandmas, aunties, uncles, but then you got your cousin. Then you
Yeah,
got your
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like,
And I feel like too, it's like maybe this is just like my own perspective of it. It's like it's just a casual LinkedIn. That's the way I view it. Is it's
yeah.
just a little more whereas LinkedIn's going to be a little more like formal. We got to keep it a little more professional versus like you could throw some family stuff on Facebook, your kid, like whatever, right? It's just a little more casual. Just like not all the party stuff. That I feel like that's more of like Snapchat and everything else.
That's actually a perfect analogy. Like I'm gonna start using that one. That's dope.
Casual LinkedIn. That's what we're rolling with.
That's what LinkedIn. That's funny, but I like that one.
So what are you doing? I know you said career stuff is I know another piece of the puzzle was like leadership development.
Mhm.
Like how I guess what are you doing? And I guess my part B to that question would be is like as you come in, or I guess really like as you interviewed for the position there is like did you have to have like your own program developed and like present it of like hey like in the leadership realm like this is what I want to do A B and C, this is my philosophy behind it, same thing from career and things, community engagement, stuff like that. Yeah.
So luckily I came in as the coordinator, and so I did not have to have all that information. They just wanted a former student athlete, that had their head on straight, who really want to kind of educate and build out a program. Now, granted, I did have my own program coming in built
Yeah.
out, and so obviously that takes a little time in terms of career development to kind of get implemented. You know how it is, student athletes, they don't want to come to stuff. So that's taking a while to build, but that's been good. Like one of the things we did a experience Pittsburgh trip where we took
Okay.
students to see Dick's Sporting Goods, the corporate office, and
Nice.
visit with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they were able to network with alums, kind of get insights on the industries, and so I've been real big on kind of trying to expose them because I believe exposure leads to expansion, right? Like
Yeah.
came
Ooh, I
back
like
from
that.
that Pittsburgh trip, and all these students were like, I never knew Dick's Sporting Goods had a corporate office or the opportunities that lie within that career. And so now those students that went on the trip, they're in my office every day. Hey man, I applied for this job at Dick's Sporting Goods. Like I applied for this with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And so now it's coming full circle for them. And then also like just bringing people on campus. Like I'm bringing the Pirates and the Steelers on campus next week to kind of focus
Yeah.
network and how they got in the industry insights because we have so many students that major in sport management. Like it's kind of important to really touch on that realm, but that's really what I'm trying to do right now. Kind of just bring people in and expose them to so many things that their mind just expands. And so, also I have your basics, resume workshops, get that done. I'm also here. Door is always open to work on a resume, do a mock interview, and so those are kind of some of the things I'm doing with the career development piece.
Yeah. What like what are those positions you're bringing in from like Steelers and Pirates and stuff like that to just
Yeah, yeah.
talk to them?
So yeah, I have Kelly Ross. She's actually the director of people and strategy, which is
Okay.
like the human resources department. But they do a little different, focus on the culture of things. Kelly, WVU alum, went through the sport management program, so she's really good. From the Steelers, Darrell Young, director of player development and
Yeah.
player engagement. He's really good, just talking about like the identity and kind of he worked in the NFL PA, and I think his story was like he didn't have it all figured out either, but if
Yeah.
you hear him and you see him on paper, you're like, oh, he worked for the NFL PA and the Steelers. Like he got to know something. But I think his story of like again being vulnerable as a former student athlete, like he didn't have it figured out. I think that's the natural thing. Like, and so those are some of the positions. We had their director of communications coming in, kind of talking about how they send things out, the articles they write. Somebody from community engagement, and so kind of just an overall, just diverse field of opportunities. Because again, expose them and hopefully it expands their
Yeah.
mind.
Okay, so here's a what sport there is like the most in tune, just out of curiosity.
You're gonna it's gonna be surprising. Actually, wrestling and gymnastics are the two. Like they're actually really tied.
Are they really?
Yeah, like, the wrestling guys are great. Like I love my wrestling student athletes. Like they,
They got some
they're,
screws loose, but that's all right.
hey, they're great now. They're like really outgoing. Like they'll come in the office and like they'll be joking around, but again they'll get serious and be like, all right, I want to learn about this. But again, y'all got that playful attitude. You
Yeah,
know
yeah,
how y'all
yeah,
are.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah. That's wild. Um, yeah, I've always thought too, at some degree, is those two sports, like from a male and female perspective, like mentality is very like similar.
yeah,
Just
I think
in terms
y'all
of like,
have real good interpersonal skills though too. Like y'all can talk to anybody. Y'all got the energy, and so I think that's probably why. Like all my wrestling guys got the juice. Like they come in here lit.
they literally might be as well. Like you,
Oh,
that's funny. That's funny. Hey, there and like you said, talk to anybody. Is like those are the ones who like, you're like, all right, bro. Like I gotta go. Like I got another meeting. Like you got to dip. Been in here 2 hours. Appreciate you, but like,
yeah.
see the door, please.
I also like how they like. This is the thing I try to tell people too. Like when they see me, they think I'm just this person who's like this. Like I have so much authority, in which I do, but it's like they're kind of intimidated. I'm like,
Right.
yo, I was just in your shoes 2 years ago. Like we can talk. Like I know your lingo.
Yeah, no, seriously. And I think that that's been a large part of like my own superpower too is, some people call it like like meeting them on their level, so
Yeah,
to
that's all good.
speak. And, it's talking about those things that they think are like off limits. I can't tell you how many times of like dating, right? Like talking about those and relationships and like, man, I'd never date anybody. I'm like, you better learn now. Like, you don't want to be 35 going on your first date. Like, you know, and I think that they are genuinely looking for conversations like that. It's outside the box that is they want guidance. They don't want to be dumb in front of their friends, right? Kind of going back to that mentality of it. Or, you know, they think it's cool to be the player, right? Like, oh, bro, like, man, come on, man, like, bro, it's almost time to grow up. Like, it's not cool anymore. Everybody
Yeah.
in your DMs, like, no,
Yeah, yeah,
no,
man. I mean, I think that's why like development is like the perfect medium, right? Like you're not the academic advisor who's always talking about grades, who's always talking about eligibility. You're not the coach who they just got yelled at. You're kind of like that
yep,
ground to where it's like, oh, I'll just go to Ryan's office and like we'll have a casual conversation because I have nothing to worry about, right? Like this is a safe space. I'm not gonna bother you about your grades. I'm not really gonna talk to you about what just happened on the court, the field,
yep.
wherever the case may be. So I think it's the perfect medium for them to just come in and be themselves holistically. And so
Yeah, and two is I think it's nice to know that, like, I mean, like you're not gonna really have a say like in if they're losing or gaining playing time. And so it's like you're literally kind of like the outside eyeballs, the outside ears, the outside source, to just come in and, again, like we said, shoot the shit of like saying anything, because it's not like you're gonna pick up the phone and be like, well, so and so just broke up. They're like, they don't care. They get off my phone, right? Like
not at all.
that's irrelevant.
But yeah, man, it takes a while to get to that stage too, because like I said, when they see you, they're like, oh, that's just another person that works in WVU athletics. Like, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what he's on. Is he gonna snitch on me? We gonna have problems? Like, no, man, it's a safe space. So yeah.
And I think too is, actually, I'll give credit where credit's due. Is so he's had a conversation with Alex Martin. He's player engagement with the Dolphins, and he like made the point of like, he's like, when I first got there, he was like, again, talk about labels. He was like, if I always went in the locker room with the clipboard, I'd be the clipboard guy, right? Like if I always went in the locker room with the fine checks, I'd be the fine guy. And so he's like, he was purposeful about like when he would go in there and like what he would say, so that like he became kind of like one of the guys too. And so I was like, my analogy for that too is like, I think my kind of famous question, so to speak, is usually like when I get on campus and like, literally just shooting the shit like with different athletes is like my go-to. I'm always just like, what'd you eat for dinner last night? And like,
Mhm.
what? And I'm just like, it's the icebreaker. It's like, dude, I'm not always here to talk about life. I'm not here to like, we don't always have to be in this like deep heart to heart conversation. We can just have surface level talk too about like anything and everything. And so I think that that gives them, lightens the mood and sounds similar. It's like how you kind of go about it and approach it of like, dude, we don't always have to have like this
At all.
mind blowing conversation.
I mean, because then again, like my narrative here is, oh, Ryan's the guy who's gonna get you a job, and like that's layered, right? Like it's so many, it's a whole process with the resume interview, et cetera, et cetera. So like a lot of times the narrative last semester was like, oh, I don't have to go see him until I'm on my last leg, I'm about to leave. Like I'm like, nah, like I'm here 24/7. Like if you want to just come in and just sit down and talk and ask me anything, like I tell them all the time too. Like I've been in your shoes. That's also something they love to hear, right? Like I've been the redshirt freshman that wasn't
Yep.
playing. I've been the senior that's playing. I've been the junior that's playing. I've been the senior that didn't know I didn't have it figured out. And so I'm like, I've been in kind of every stage I've been in. And so that kind of a lot of times breaks the ground too for them to be like, all right, Ryan's a cool dude.
Yeah. And I think too, it goes back to your proactive versus reactive thing is I always say, like, don't treat me like the doctor. Don't come to
Yeah.
me when you're sick or when you need something. It's like, get ahead, right? Like, come to me just to pick my brain about anything and everything. And that way it's like, you have all this ammunition to use whenever
Mhm.
the time comes and you never know like when you need it. um or I always call it like planting seeds too, of
Yeah,
like
that's all you
throwing
do.
gems out, planting seeds of like, I'm here if you need anything.
That's it. That's it. That's all you got to say, man. And you just never know. Like I had one student athlete that just kept coming into my office when I first got here. Like, really was just like, I'm just interested to know what you do. And so, just that conversation led to so many things from building a LinkedIn to like now she has a full time job already before she's even graduating. And she was like, if I would
Yeah.
have never stopped by your office, like, I wouldn't be here. Like, you know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah,
it all started so casual too. Like, it had nothing to do with career development. So, this is a story.
it's interesting though, is I feel like that's when, at least for me in my own personal experience of like, those have been like the most powerful people like in my life. I know my first mentor is the reason we got on the phone was like, it was literally to be a better CEO, right? It's strictly supposed to be a business conversation. And that's when she was just like, okay, time out. Before we even talk business, she's like, Ryan, who are you? I was like,
Hmm.
that's a stupid question. Like, my name's Ryan,
Hmm.
CEO, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
And she's just like, no, she's like, I'm here to tell you, like, if you want to grow your business, like we've got to change you first. And so that was like this 26, 27-year-old. And I was like, whoa, what? She's like, you want a better relationship? You have to change. You want to make more money? You have to change. You want a better business? You have to change. You want a better body? You have to change, right? Like, so it all came centered around like this identity when again, it was literally supposed to be a strictly business conversation. And she's still in my life now, and I've worked on and off with her for like the last like 6 years, 5 or 6 years. So yeah, it's just interesting how like a lot of those relationships like evolve, but when they started as something completely different.
Yeah, so yeah, totally different. I think about my mentors at App State, like it was the same thing. Like I would have never thought like I would be cool with a deputy athletics director.
Right.
That's me that like my freshman year of college, I'd be like, no. But like guy named Jonathan Reeder, like great dude. And like we honestly just started talking, just having a conversation, like, oh, where you from? What you got going on? What's going on in your life? How's mom? How's dad? And so like that grew into like what I am today, right? Just
Yeah.
who I was, and then he could put me in a position to help me. And so I think that's something people gotta understand too. Like you can't help someone you don't know. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think people come in here all the time like, oh, can you connect me to such and such? I don't know you. Like, you know what I'm saying? To be quite frank, like to be honest, because I don't want to put my reputation on the line for someone I don't know. And so, like you said, just come in, have a casual conversation. Let's get to know each other because that's how you help. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and it's funny, like an athlete would ask that question too, because like even I think back like when I had the gym of like, and kids want to get recruited, and then like a college coach would call me and they would ask me certain questions. I was like I would never forget one. A coach called me. It was a wrestler, and he was just like, "Does he love wrestling?" And I was like, "That's not a question for me. Like, you need to call him and ask that, right? Like, I don't. I mean, I can give you an answer I think that I know as far as like, is he committed and disciplined and show up and do all the training? But like, does he freaking love it? I don't know. Go ask him, right? Like, I'm not about to put, say I'm not making an assumption, right?
Mhm.
Like to send a kid somewhere. And I think that it's the same of, you gotta have some level of like a connection to be able to like help somebody out.
Yeah, you gotta know. You gotta know. It was like that too when I played football. Like even during my playing days, guys would be like, "Oh, can you hook me up with this coach?" Like, yeah, we went to the same high school, but like, again, I don't know you, and we're not connected. And so I think that's something I also tell our student athletes. Like, if you want someone to help you, like, you have to spend time to get to know them on a personal level, and they have to know you too. And so, yeah, that's just a
And like, oh my God, athletes. And
yeah,
it's such a small world too, right? Like those people that are going to come meet those people from the Steelers and the Pirates is like that community is it's like again going back to the conversation with Alex Martin is like it's an easy duh statement, but I was like, damn, like he's like, there's only 32 of us, right?
yeah.
So it's like we all know, like I know all 31 other people that are in this position. And he was like, so when people reach out and ask about it, I was just like, damn, that is true, right? And so it's like that was the first thing I thought of when you were like, yeah, I'm having the Steelers and I'm having the Pirates and like all these people come. I'm like, the easiest, like even if you came and slept through it, like at least show up, right? Like,
Just shake their hand because it's so crazy the amount of people. I've been full time for almost a year now. And like the amount of connectedness I have, like just all over college athletics is crazy because someone knows someone. Oh, I know Doug Gillen at App State. I know Rob Carsall. Like it's so connected that it's crazy. It's mind blowing sometimes. Like, but
yeah. Yeah, and I think that as of recently, just having conversations with people like in the player development space, it's like either before or ask, I'm like, hey, do you know blah blah blah? They're like, oh yeah, it's all my guys. It's like, damn, like everybody, literally everybody. Glad y'all had a good time. Otherwise, y'all be talking shit about me, and nobody would ever come back and talk to me again.
yeah, especially player development. Like a player development is like a real tight knit kind of community. Like I saw you had Ed Jones on. Like
Yeah.
I'm talking to Ed
Dude,
Jones too. You know what I'm saying? Like
okay, hold on, time out. Do you know Ed?
I know Ed. Yeah, me.
Literally is I like if you'll go back, had a conversation. Somebody else said, I was like, dude, have you ever seen the movie Old School?
Yep.
Okay, I was like, he's like the Godfather, right? Like he's now like the Godfather of like player development. I literally went and posted this on
Yeah,
LinkedIn like an hour ago. I was like, shout out Ed Jones. By the way, apparently I've named you the Godfather. You're the guru. You're the best.
yeah. I mean,
Everybody knows you.
everybody who wanted to get in player development had to have a conversation with Ed Jones. That's just how it was. I remember
That's
reaching out to
wow.
Ed my senior year. I was like, "Yo, I see you doing player development. Like, what is this? Like, it looks interesting. I want to get in." But yeah, Ed's good people, man. Love Ed.
That's so fun. Well, like it makes sense now too of like why he branched off and kind of like is doing things like on his own. Because at first when I had the conversation, I was like, yeah, like that, woo, like go do your thing, bro. Like, getting out of like the college space, which keeps you, I mean, you have to work with that university, right? It keeps you kind of like in a box, so to speak. And so it just makes sense of like, I mean, his whole motto, right? Is like generational impact.
Yeah,
And so I think it makes sense of like everybody gets on here. Everybody's like,
yeah.
Ed's my guy, bro. I promote Ed for everything.
You know, he had the blueprint for player development. And like all you had to do was read it, you know what I'm saying, and then take what you want and kind of add your spin to it, and then it will be your own program. And so like he really did like lay that foundation, that guideline. So yeah, he's definitely the godfather.
So what's is it essentially because like player development strictly football and then like student athlete development is just more like broad
Yeah.
scope with more sports?
Yeah, that's all it like student athlete development encompasses all of our Olympic sports most of the time. So like when I was at App State, like we didn't have a player development person because we were a
Yeah.
small school. So that one person in student athlete development, they were responsible for programming for 500 plus student athletes. As the word player development was just like you just got your football guys, that's all you're
Yeah.
programming for, that's all you're responsible for. And so yeah.
So like big dream like for you is do you like this world? Putting you on the spot, right? Like do you like the student athlete world or like because I mean like football is your background, right? Like would you want to be like honed in on like giving your time and attention in the player development side at some point?
I think this position has allowed me to see how I can kind of navigate both. Like I love student athlete development because I'm meeting so many different diverse backgrounds. And it's
Yeah.
also more challenging, right? Like it's so hard to program for 500 plus student athletes, but also realizing like they all have different levels, they have different skill sets has been kind of the cool thing. I think in football, like so many times, a lot of guys come in on the same skill set in terms of programming. So you know what they need, right?
Yeah.
That's where over here it's a little more complex, right? Like some student athletes might not need a resume workshop. All they need is a networking night. And
Yep.
so how we create programming for those student athletes that might not need the resume or the interviewing, they just need to be in front of people. And so I think it's been kind of cool to kind of see that parallel. Also,
Hmm.
like it just challenged me more. Like at App State, I was kind of more designated to football as the world over here. Now I'm being able to kind of branch out, interact with all the coaching staffs. Like it's just I think I like it more for the professional development standpoint.
Yeah. And going back to is a large part of like your message in terms of like career development is I think back to I don't remember where I saw it, probably YouTube or something, but Bama's football team had Gary Vaynerchuk come and talk. And like at the center of his message was like, you play football at Alabama, use it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I think it goes back, like you said earlier, is like you have this, I call it leverage, right? Like, and you can't use it forever, right? Like, because even if you go play in the league, it's only so many years, and then it's a what have you done for me lately kind
Mhm.
of world because it's even now it's like you're not quite there yet, but like wait till you're like 5 or even 10 years removed, you'll start talking and they're like, bro, like, what do you like? You're so washed up, man. Like, what are you talking about? Right. Like, I mean, I know when I go in, they're like, bro, you were an athlete, walk a day in my shoes, right? Like you would never make it kind of mentality. And so do you help them try to leverage that? Because in any sport, right? Like, honestly, the especially you talk about NIL, like the female sports are crushing it.
Yeah, going crazy.
And so it's like use your superpower while you can for now. Is that I guess is that like part of like a of your message to them and like how do you have those conversations with them?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. Like again, my superpower at App State getting out was that I was a football player, so I
Yeah.
had the leverage to reach out to our AD. And he was like, "Oh, I know who you are. You're one of our players." And so it just started, and that led to a job just like that. Like
Yeah.
we tell the story all the time. Like all I did was reach out, use my superpower, created that leverage, and that led to a job opportunity. And so again, I think the best thing about my job right now is being able to storytell so they understand like all right, this is how I created my leverage. And like a lot of times right now they like the wrestlers, matter of fact, they always like, bro, you're always preaching LinkedIn. I'm like, bro, LinkedIn is your best friend. Like I'm telling you. And so like helping them kind of navigate that and like create their LinkedIn profiles and tell their story through that, right? Like you know how LinkedIn is, like it's
Yep.
probably one of the best platforms that's out right now in terms of networking. And so that's one thing I preach to all of our student athletes is definitely LinkedIn. How do we create this leverage on LinkedIn to where you can reach out to anyone? Like, after this
Literally.
night, I'm like, yo, if you don't reach out to Kelly, whoever came, like, and be like, hey, it was nice to meet you. Would love to have another call with you. Would love to just sit down and pick your brain. Would love to have a day to come job shadow. Like, I think that's the thing that's like I'm trying to preach.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally why we're having this
Yeah,
conversation right now. Like,
yeah.
literally, and the exact reason is I sent a cold message on LinkedIn and was like, hey, I'm talking with a bunch of like player development, student athlete development type people. Came across your profile, notice you're in the space. Do you want to have a conversation? And you were like, yeah,
Just like that. And then also too, like I tell them too, like don't forget the power that WVU has, right? Like I connected with you. I
totally.
was like, oh, he went to WVU, like former student athlete. I'm working with student athletes. Great connection to have. And so again, that's just a branding thing. Just because you have WVU on your LinkedIn profile, like that's a strategy that you can leverage with anyone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think too is it's interesting. I haven't had this conversation with anybody about like really pushing specifically like LinkedIn, like to be able to utilize to gain traction in whatever it is that you're trying to do. Because I've always been hesitant because people are like, hey, like, do you send like messages, basically DMs, right? Like, and at the time is like I was more involved with like Facebook and stuff like that. I was like, I don't know, man. It feels so kind of like sleazy a little bit of like sending these cold messages on like Facebook. But I when I did get over to LinkedIn, I was like, well, there's a certain level of like professionalism, right? Like it's not like I'm like a total scumbag. And
Yeah,
so is like I think that at some level people expect it, right? Like, hey, appreciate the connection, like this is what I'm doing. If you'd love to talk more, here you go.
yeah.
Um yeah, I don't know that I mean, I'm just learning that, so I can definitely like if I
Oh,
put myself in their shoes at like 20, I'm probably like, yeah,
yeah.
I don't know.
Not sliding into them DMs professionally. That's all it is. That's all it is. And it's funny. That's how I got like all of my networking trips, like my Pittsburgh Pirates and Steelers pipeline. It all started on LinkedIn.
Did it really?
Yeah, just send out a message. Hey, would love to bring some student athletes for a networking trip. Crazy,
Damn.
like that simple.
Damn. I watched believe it or not, what really pushed me over the edge. Now, so one of my like coaches, mentors is to like within like reach outs and stuff. I was literally sitting next to him. He's like, watch this. Um, Sent a voice message, cold voice message to a very prominent speaker,
Yeah,
eight figure earner, and like he just sent it. Hey, blah blah, would love to da 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 da. Notice piece of your con like it was like 40 seconds long, something like that. Dude responded back within 20 minutes and was like, yeah, dude, totally like count me in. It was all about like coming on his show, his podcast, like whatever. And I was like, all right, damn, maybe I should start getting in these DMs, right? Like,
that's all it is. Like because you gotta think, like it's just like if you're on a dating app, like you know what people on LinkedIn are there for. Like they're there to help in network. So that's always one of the things I say too. So it is
and
interesting.
like, yeah, I remember of because at first I'd be like, do I want a friend? Do I want to go through and like friend like people or at connect right with people? And I had a different coach mentor. She was just like, isn't that the point? Like, why would you? Why would like if they
Literally,
don't, then they don't. Like, but like that's the whole point of the platform.
that's it. That's it. That's the whole point. So yeah, man, just creating that leverage, telling them shoot, sliding those DMs professionally. Because I've seen it do some crazy things. Like, because I remember my supervisor asked me like, "How did you get all these networking trips set up?" LinkedIn.
That's fun. So what prompted you to be over there in
Um,
that space? I guess.
in the space of what in
Like
terms of
LinkedIn, like what was like the tipping point of like, oh no, this is where I need to be and this is where I'm going to put, I don't know, 80-90% of like my energy of like getting engagements, like whatever it is,
I think
done versus like emails or whatever.
I think when I got hurt, like I said, like that probably was the best thing that ever happened to me because I learned so much. Like and I was in the career center too. Like gotta get that kind of situated. So like they used to always talk about LinkedIn. I was like, all right, let me check this out for myself. And so then getting on LinkedIn and like actually exploring, I'm like, oh, this is like actually kind of cool. Like I really can do some things with LinkedIn. And so I think like through those 3 weeks I was hurt, actually building my LinkedIn and talking about like who I was, what I was going through, I was like, okay, I like LinkedIn. I can kind of get some traction with this.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I don't think they understand at all. At all.
Probably not. I'm telling you, I'm in my office every day, like, so frustrating. Why don't you get this?
That's interesting. So is that's a big part of your career development of
Yeah,
like, and that's probably like step one. Like that's got
yeah,
to be, right? Like
yeah. For me, yeah,
go
love
get a
LinkedIn.
damn profile now.
Build your profile right now and tell your story through it. Like people love just seeing your story as a student athlete. So yeah, step.
Interesting. I love it. I love it. So what is I guess the your overarching like dream outcome impact that like you want to like have I guess there at WVU, but like just overarching, and then one more question to follow up with that.
Yeah, I think overarching is really getting student athletes to understand who they are outside of their sport. That can be current student athletes, that can be here at WVU, that can be elsewhere. Like the work I'm doing, I think one of the best things has been able to do is show other student athletes that I played with, that I played against, or former student athletes. Like I had guys reach out like, yo, like I appreciate what you're doing. Like you transition out the game of football really helped me transition out and realize that it's okay. And so like just kind of creating that narrative that like it's okay. Like it's okay not to play your sport. It's okay to end your career. It's okay to have a fallback plan. And so I think that's kind of like the overarching goal for me is like to really show athletes that it's okay to transition from your sport, but
Mm,
also teaching them how to use their sport and create that leverage for professional opportunities, whether it be working a 9 to 5, whether it be entrepreneurship, but kind of teaching them those transferable skills that they can transition well. And so that's kind of the overarching goal.
yeah.
Whether I'm here at WVU or anywhere else, I think that's the goal for my life, man, just to make an impact on all our student athletes across the world, across the country.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Maybe this ties into the last question. Hopefully it's not the same answer, but we'll see. So my ending question for everybody is always, if you were in a stadium with 100,000 people and you could only leave them with one message, what would it be?
Ooh, it's a tough one. One message, and it
One
could
message, that's it. Then a mic drop.
be. Oh, that's a tough one because I'm a basic dude, man. Like, so I'll give you backstory. So my grandfather died in 2017, and so I went to his funeral, and I like the one thing that I realized that everybody said was like he was a great man, right? Like that's it. Nobody could say anything else.
Right.
He had a lot of money, he didn't have this. So I'm thinking like Ryan Huff is a great man, and like really being able to stand on that and say like, all right, I can drop the mic and walk out knowing I'm a great man. I have all these values. So that's probably it.
Yeah, I'm gonna poke and pry a little bit too. Like if you had to describe like what a great man looks like how would you I guess ultimately like what do you want that to look like?
Yeah, he so of course character. He was a great man of character. One thing, again, I'm taking that from my grandpa. He always did what he was gonna say, and everybody
Right.
always said that. Like if he said he was gonna help someone out, like it wasn't like kind of this cold, like I'll help you out and I'm gone. He was like, no, he really actually helped out. He also always served people, right? So I think being a great person is about serving, helping others, no matter what, without just that personal gain. Like I think we see that a lot too, where people want to help someone out, but it's for their betterment and for their
Yeah.
gain. So, just knowing that I helped out, and I was like, I didn't want anything out of this besides just to help you and see you succeed. And of course, man, honesty, always being
Yeah.
honest, keeping it real, like you say, shooting the shit, when everything goes down. So, I think that's it.
Yeah, I love that. I think too is like I always like at some level wish when you said like kind of the do what you say you're gonna do
Mhm.
is like more prevalent today in
Mhm.
terms of like don't need as many like contracts and things like written in blood and ink of like if you say X, just like do X. I think it's having those type of relationships is few and far between
Yeah.
nowadays. So yeah, like when you can find those, I think like literally one of my mentors the other day told me, he's like, dude, like I invested, he has his own mentor. He's like, dude, I poured money like in an investment. He was just like asking, like he was growing his company, right? He was like, I don't need to know anything. Like, just here's the money, right? And I was like, damn, like that really is powerful. Cause he's like, I like trust him like
Yeah.
with like to literally do the right thing. And I know that I like everything he says, like he's gonna do. And so, yeah, it just makes me think of that of like I wish more relationships were held that way today,
Yeah.
especially.
Especially, yeah, just being genuine, man. I think that's the beautiful thing. I think Kevin Hart said it too. Is like just doing things and not wanting a return on it, or not
Yeah.
wanting like a shout out to. Like that's kind of something that I've been battling like too in this role. Is like wanting to post everything I'm doing. And I'm like, no, but that's literally my job description. Like that's literally my mission in life is to help student athletes. And so sometimes I battle that because I'm like, I said I would do this without the praise and the glory. So
Yeah, it's interesting too though. It's like in some sense of well, funny, not to go down a rabbit hole, but like if it's like athletes, I think there's a certain level is like they want that recognition, they want that post, and so like it does make them feel good. But I think it's the balance of I was talking with a couple athletes and early on in the season is that absolutely crushing it and then had um a day where it did not go as well. And so there was other people sitting around and I was like, did I text you when everything was going well? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, did I text you when things went bad? They're like, yeah. And I was like, that's the balance, right? Like I'm not only going to be around when you're on the Wheaties box, it's like I'm going to be around like when it didn't go as well, right? Like it just is. And I think that when they know that, it's like you can make that post without them feeling like, oh, he's just using my clout to be able to like gain traction or like build his own recognition or whatever it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and that's part of it too, man. Like even serving like the walk-on student athletes. Like I don't just want to impact the scholarship guys or just like the guys who have it all figured out. Like I want to impact everybody. Like you can be the walk-on, you can be playing 0 minutes, 5 minutes. Like just knowing like that regardless, I'm gonna treat y'all equally.
Yeah. And you never even know. Like, I can think of an athlete super close with, they were on a team, um, wasn't having of what they would view a ton of success, and
Mhm.
then like transferred and is absolutely crushing it. And I was like, but I was like, the whole time. This is a 2.5 year span, right? Like the whole time. It's like I've always been, I mean, in my eyes, like one of your, if not the like biggest like fan like for you. And so I think there's a certain level of like you never know when that person may become a superstar. It just may not be a WVU, right? They might transfer to Furman or wherever of just like and then become the rock star there. And it's like, dude, like
Yeah.
I've always had your back.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, it's interesting too. I think we're seeing that in the NCAA too with the transfer portal. Like, I mean, think about Michael Penix. Like, he was at Indiana and then just comes in and goes to the national championship and just like balls out. And so,
Yeah.
like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you just never know. And you know, in athletics, like everything literally happens so quick. Like within a time frame of 4 to 5 years, you're gone. You can go from being a superstar to not being a superstar in a year. You can go
Yep.
from not a superstar. You know what I'm saying? Like, and vice versa. And so like just the transition period is like really so quick just because the life shelf in college athletics is so short.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, there's tons of examples. I mean, you kind of throw, I mean, a little bit of Bo Nix into that
Yeah, Bo Nix
argument
same
too,
way.
right? Like he was okay. I mean, he wasn't bad at Auburn, but boy, when he got to Oregon, it was like, bro, you're throwing for like 700 yards a game. Jesus Christ.
They're crazy, man. But so yeah, it's crazy to see that, man.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, man, I appreciate it. Yeah, like I said, is I had a blast, and I always tell people is it's funny you talk about like your superpower being like in the art of like telling stories and everything is typically how I always end it is that's a big reason for me of like starting the podcast is
Mhm.
to get other people's stories out there because they may not resonate with mine, they may resonate with yours or an analogy that you told, and maybe you planted a seed in somebody or just dropped a gem for them, and hopefully that's the goal of like as people give me their ears so to speak and listen to us run our mouths that they're able to like take something and run with it.
Oh yeah, no, appreciate you having me on, man. Like podcasts are like extended mentorship. Like I say that all the time. Like I listen to so many podcasts, so you never know who you're impacting. Like I've been impacted by podcasts many a time. So man, appreciate you having me on. It's been a joy to kind of share my story and I hope it impacts someone out there.
Love it, dude. Love it. Until next time, everybody. Peace.